Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Kimberli Flores, and I am your host, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight. I am beyond grateful to be partnered with the International Society of Black Latinos. I reached out to this organization because I was thrilled to find an organization committed to amplifying Black Latino voices. Now, tonight is the first ever event of our roundtable series we're calling In Conversation. We're bringing together various organization leaders, authors, historians, artists, and activists to explore issues affecting the Latino community. The goal of today's panel is to discuss our varied, multiracial, and multi-ethnic Latino perspectives with the hope to create greater understanding and unity within our Latino community. All right, so my idea to create this panel series grew out of my own desire to dissect my own identity. Am I Puerto Rican, American, Latina, Afro-Latina, Afro-Latinx, Afro-Latine? Am I mixed race, Black, or of African descent? How do I identify myself, and how does the world identify me? So I'll tell you just a little bit about myself. I currently work as a professional actress and dancer, and now writer, endeavoring to create authentic narratives representing people like me. I'm committed to amplifying Latino voices and inspiring social change. I've had the opportunity to work on various projects that highlight issues that are central to our community, including the feature film Shine, a story of culture, music, and gentrification in Spanish Harlem. You can watch it on Amazon Prime. And as a dancer, I've had the honor to share stages with legendary Latin artists such as Celia Cruz, Tito Puente, and El Gran Combo. And most recently, as one of the core dancers in Lin-Manuel Miranda's In the Heights. I've currently written and developed a television show entitled Transplant, chronicling the funny yet distressing experiences of an Afro-Latina woman grappling with identity and fitting into society. And I'm sure many of you here can relate. I am absolutely thrilled to be here tonight and to be here in partnership with Juanita Palacios Sims. She is the founder and the president of the International Society of Black Latinos. And when I first thought about doing this event, I Googled any Afro-Latino organizations I can find. And I was so impressed with ISBL, with their panel, with their board of advisors and the types of events that they do. And I knew right away that this was the organization I wanted to partner with. So without further ado, allow me to introduce Juanita. Juanita has been an accountant in the entertainment industry for more than 15 years, as well as a business manager for various salsa music groups. She's currently a travel consultant and entrepreneur, securing the necessary documentation for Americans to travel legally to Cuba for over the last 20 years. As a Cuban American, she has made it her mission to share her love for her country and for the people of Cuba. In 2017, she was honored by the Rudy Regalado Foundation for her dedication, devotion, and commitment to the community. And this year, in March of 2021, Mrs. Palacios Sims was featured on Telemundo among 4 other women from across the nation for their special Mujeres Imparables, Unstoppable Women. I'd like to allow Juanita a moment now to speak about ISBL and tell us a little bit about the mission.
Kimberli, thank you so very much. And I'm excited to say that you are one of our newest board members. So congratulations to you. We are really excited about that. I represent Cuba and I also represent Colombia. I started the International Society of Black Latinos along with Melissa Shepard Williams, who's on the, one of our panelists, and other friends to bring awareness of the Afro-Latino. Not only are we bringing awareness of the Afro-Latino, but we also, our secondary goal is to educate the broader communities and about the, Afro-Latino diaspora. We go to schools, talk to children, we hold workshops, we go to businesses. We are just excited and just happy wherever we go to just, talk about who we are as Afro-Latinos. That yes, there are people of color that are Latinos and speak Spanish. So I am so happy and I welcome everyone that's on board here that took a moment to come and, chat with us sit with us and listen to this amazing panel discussion that's going to take place. And I'm also excited that we have East Coast and West Coast together for the first time. Woohoo! Así que bienvenidos, and I will turn it over to Kimberli Flores. Gracias.
Thank you, Juanita. Okay, so we're now going to talk about Melissa Shepard. Miss Melissa Shepard is a clinical psychotherapist and licensed school-based therapist, as well as the vice president of the International Society of Black Latinos. She obtained a Master's of Arts degree in clinical psychology at Antioch University in Los Angeles. And in 2004, she opened her own private practice as a Black Latina psychotherapist. Her curiosity about cultural history influences her process of supporting individuals in their healing journey. Thank you for being here, Melissa. And we will move to Miss Denise Plasod. I must say it's an honor to have her here. I was a graduate of the University of Southern California, and I got to see her work as a director and was floored by the beauty and the layered complexity of the work that she directs and creates. So it's an honor to have you as well here, Denise. Denise Plasod is an actress, writer, director, producer, and voiceover artist, and has been directing theater in Los Angeles for over 25 years. She was the artistic director of the Multicultural Theater Alliance, LA Diversified, and is the current associate artistic director of the Bilingual Foundation of the Arts, a theater that was created in 1972 by actress Carmen Zapata. Denise most recently starred in the film Juela, which had its premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival earlier this month, and you can see her on the hit TV show Snowfall as Doña Rosa on FX. Thank you for being here, Denise. We have the lovely Melody Mercedes. Melody Mercedes is an empowerment coach, wellness advocate, and international social entrepreneur. And I can say personally, an all-around badass, if I may. She is currently the Director of Operations and International Business Development at the International Fitness Alliance, a UK-based fitness education company in the Middle East. Melody is the founder and owner of the Liberada Coaching Consultancy and Collective. Her purpose and passion is to empower women to discover, own, and rise in their truth, and then to teach them to thrive in it the way only women can. Melody has been a personal coach of mine, and it's a real honor to have her here. And I'm thankful for all of you for being here. And we will begin the first series of In Conversation. Here we go. I'm going to allow everyone the opportunity to ask questions in the chat during the Q&A portion. Right now, we're going to ask some questions that have been compiled together to the panelists, and then later on, we'll open it up. Ladies, welcome. I'm going to start with asking you kind of a personal question. How do you personally identify? What labels do you prefer when it comes to race, your race, culture, and identity? As we know, that's an area where there's many varied ways of looking at how you can identify yourself. And I'd like to just start there. So if Melissa, you'd like to begin.
Well, firstly, thank you, Kimberly, for leading us in this series. This is so exciting. And so hopefully we invite reflection. So the journey to identity is such an interesting one, and mine certainly has. I was born and raised in Panama. And like many people, born and raised outside of the US, so much informs how we name ourselves, how we identify ourselves. So I grew up saying, soy panameña, Panamanian. Thankfully, in my family that has roots in several islands in the Caribbean, we constantly, and I'm thinking of Abuelita right now, we constantly talked about our Black history. Black history before our family arrived in Panama and since. And so there was a consciousness about our Blackness. But, the labels we use really, transform over time. I've been living now in the US for 35 years. I can't believe how time flies. And it is here in this country that I have been using the label Afro-Latina or Black Latina, still Panamanian, but these words that we use more as a result of this movement that's focused on going more deeply into our history. And in Panama, there's quite the movement too. And you now hear more people say Afro-Panameña, Afro-Panameño. So it's really interesting how these labels have to do with what's happening in history.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to Melody.
Hey, hello, everyone. And thank you for having me on this panel. The rest of the panel guests are incredible. So for identification, I typically, when asked where I'm from, and this is, for me, in regards to identity, how I describe myself over time has shifted really depending where I am in the world. I was born in New York, raised in New York and Dominican Republic, and I currently live in the Middle East, in the Kingdom of Bahrain, where there is quite a diverse group of Latinos, although no Dominicans, unfortunately. So in New York, growing up both in New York and Dominican Republic, proudly identified as a Dominicana, first and foremost. For me, the American piece was just an automatic assumption. You hear it in my accent, we're in New York, you know? And then at some point, I think in my 20s, when I started hearing the term Afro-Latina, I remember the first time I heard it, for me, it was just, well, it was magic. I loved it. I felt that it beautifully encompassed me and the parts of my culture that I felt weren't necessarily at the forefront or equally celebrated within my history as a Dominican. So it was another point of identification. It was just more clarifying. I loved it. It explained my hair. It explained my skin tone a little better when you think of Dominicans, particularly my family, because we are, you know, all shades. It just is, as Latinos, as Dominicans, of course. So I do identify as an Afro-Latina. When I introduce myself, especially here in the Middle East, I don't tend to say Afro-Latina. It is a very different response. It actually causes confusion. If I say Afro-Latina, here in the Middle East, the response is they hear Afro and they're like, well, wait, what African country are you from? Or they think I'm talking about my hair. So, you know, that you can see there's an immediate confusion. They're like, what? So Latina, or I say that I'm Dominican, raised in New York. Dominican from New York. They hear my American accent, they put the American piece together. Dominican still continues to be at the forefront. However, the Afro-Latina part, if I'm speaking to an Arab or an African, it is not what I put at the front because it actually causes a bit more confusion. And believe it or not, here, people are familiar with the Dominican Republic, and it is already an expectation that as Latina, that the shade will vary, that there are Black Latinos and so forth. It just is. So I actually don't need to explain that here, as I, well, still do in the US.
Interesting. We have the international perspective now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I just realized I failed to mention one quick thing. We did have another panelist tonight, Dr. Angel Acosta, and his wife just had a baby, and he has a beautiful baby boy, and he's right now in the hospital with his wife. So we wish him and his wife well. We are so happy for the new addition to his family, but we're going to continue on, and we're going to have him in our next panel series. So without further ado, Denise, we'd love to hear your thoughts on identity and how you feel, how you personally identify. Oh, we just need you to unmute. Let me see. Can you unmute yourself?
There we go. So identity, it's a huge word for me that at times was important in my life and at times it wasn't. My parents are from Puerto Rico, and but I was born in France, educated in Italy, and then when I was almost 13, we moved back to the island. We would always go back to see my grandparents, but that's when we moved back. And suddenly I was from nowhere because in school I was seen as European, and my identity was, no, I'm from all over the place. But I'm from here now, and I'm embracing Puerto Rico, and that's how I felt, that I was from Puerto Rico. I still do. My ethnicity is multiple as well. We're a combination of many things. Mi abuelito era mestizo. He was Peruano, and his mother was Inca, and his father was Spaniard. And from the Puerto Rican side, pues many came from Spain, but many came from Africa as well. So I'm a concoction. And so what do I identify? I identify as a Puerto Rican artist. Right now, that's who I am. It may change tomorrow, but I feel strongly as a Puerto Rican woman that represents the island, that wants the musicality, the artistry, the history to be known in the United States. And I'm very proud of being from Puerto Rico.
Wonderful. Thank you, Denise. And now, Juanita, will you tell us how you identify?
I'm sorry, I'm sitting here typing to everyone, trying to find out what countries are being represented here. How do I identify myself? As a proud Cubana, Afro-Cubana. I'm a proud Afro-American. I'm a proud Latina. I have the best of all worlds, so I'm just happy to be human and to represent my country. And that's one of the reasons we started the organization, to just bring the culture, the people, the music, who we are and how we identify ourselves. Because, you know, Latinos, we're always happy. We're always, you know, we at least try to always be happy. And in anything we do, it's a party, especially for Cubans, as you all know, and I'm sure Puerto Ricans, but for Cubans, I speak. You know, it's always a party. Put two of us together and that's it. So that's how I identify myself.
Wonderful, wonderful. I love that we have so many different perspectives. We have international perspective. We have, I can say for myself, I first and foremost identified as American growing up. And then, you know, we were taught in our household that we are proud Puerto Ricans. And when I moved to Los Angeles, I would say I'm Puerto Rican and they would say, well, what is that? This is a la 2010. And I had to explain, well, we're Black, African, and we're Taino, and we're also Spaniard. They would say, oh, you're mixed race. And I thought, okay, I'm mixed race, a new label that I've never really embraced before. And as time goes, we find new ways of classifying and categorizing ourselves. As generations move on, we find that certain words apply and certain words become outdated. And so my next question for everyone is, how do you feel it's important to identify? And do you feel that sometimes identification within the Latino community can restrict us or divide us? Or do you feel like it helps create texture and nuance? And ultimately, there's ways that it can unite us. And I'll ask Melissa to chime in if you don't mind.
I think, wow, there's so much there to reflect on, Kimberli. I think I'm learning that it's important to honor each person's journey of identity, as opposed to trying to impose on someone, well, here, this is what you are. You know, as Juanita was saying, you know, ISBL was created to make the world aware of the richness of our culture, our history. And so we share information. And what people do with that information may be influencing the way they see themselves, but we're not trying to tell someone, well, this is what you are. You know, it's a very personal process. And it's also a community one, because our community in some ways influences how we see ourselves, how we talk about ourselves, how we talk about the world around us. So it's a combination of things. Can there be division? I think so, especially when we try to impose labels on someone. You know, for sure, in our history with oppression, we have been forced to take on certain names and see ourselves in certain ways that the oppressor wants us to see ourselves as. So unfortunately, sometimes in our own community, we have moved that agenda forward, creating division. So I'm just going to put in a quick commercial. I feel that ISBL is about unifying rather than dividing.
Beautiful, thank you. And if anyone else would like to chime in on that, how do you feel identity helps create unification, or maybe even some division, and how? And I think it's important we talk about that so that we start to understand how we can, and talk about how we can bridge that gap. So if anybody would like to chime in.
I'll chime in just quickly, Kimberly. I think it's a twofold. For us in the United States, being from other countries, it identifies who we are because of our village, you know, our people. In the United States of America, we find warmth and culture when we identify with our group or a similar group. For example, with ISBL, Cuba, Panama, Puerto Rico, so on and so forth, the Dominican Republic, Haiti. We all identify because we find a commonality. But then on the flip side to that, it can separate us. And I do see the separation where, you know, I'm Afro-Latina. So now the African Americans don't feel like we have something in common, or the Latinos don't feel like we have something in common. So, you know, it's a twofold, and it depends on how you educate people on that, you know, how you talk about it, how you have conversation. Because for me, being an Afro-Latina, I am so proud, and it's awesome, because now finally, after so many years of not being recognized, you know, it gives us something to say, hey, we're Latinos, but not only are we Latinos, we are Afro-Latinos. We're proud of that. So it's a twofold, like I mentioned.
Wonderful. That's such a great aspect to bring up. You know, when we identify ourselves, we're also putting ourselves in a lane, and then or it may be perceived that way, and different groups may agree or disagree with our identification. And I know I personally have dealt with that, and feeling like, am I able to claim being Afro-Latina? Do I fit the bill enough? And as a Latina who's second generation American, I'm not of the island, I'm not born on the island, am I able to claim being Latina because my Spanish isn't perfect? And oftentimes in the Latino communities, I found that I had the curliest hair, and oftentimes I was the most tan skin. And so I didn't feel like I fit the mold of what the industry showed, exemplified when it came to what a Latina is. And so, Melody, if you have any thoughts about how maybe you have dealt with in your life trying to fit in various places when it comes to your identity, and maybe even particularly within the Latino community.
So for myself, well, I was I've been blessed really with my upbringing in which, proud Dominicans and a party Juanita as well. I don't even think you need two. I'm a party by myself. As in my household, for example, my mother and my father are two entirely different complexions. My father was darker skin and my mom of a much lighter complexion, the stereotypical looking Latina actually for the US. But in my household and my aunts, my grandmother, my skin color was always a celebration, like morena, bella, like, it was always this incredible like point of pride, a point of distinction. A celebration is really the best way that I could put it. I remember as a child, my grandmother putting her arm next to mine and be like, no, because nuestro color, our color. And my grandmother's various shades lighter than I am. So I remember as a teen going, pero abuela, you're lighter. But it was, that was ingrained in me, the pride of it. So growing up in New York, I was also surrounded by Dominicans. And I remember early on in my life living in almost Washington Heights, Manhattan, and then moving to Yonkers, and being surrounded by Latinos of different socioeconomic classes, as well as different countries. I stood stronger in the Dominican part. It was, for me, at least in my household, diversity and range of color and hair is Dominican. And so that's what I led with. It was, if you didn't think I was Dominican, you were the weird one. You were the lost one. And so it's been interesting to see how with these different labels that have emerged and different ways that we identify, in moving in different places. I lived in Montreal for some time when I was younger, and now in the Middle East, I find it to be more of a unifying point. The only time that I find that there is some type of conflict is when I'm speaking to someone of a background that has a bipolar view on race. So particularly that in the US, because I must be this or that, there's no room for range, variety. So when I'm with the Latinos, that's not the case. We get we're Latinos, y la panameña es panameña, la colombiana es colombiana, and I'm Dominican, but we have a common ground and foundation, and that unites us. And then we get the extra layers of Afro-Latina or mestizo, indigenous, and so forth, that then cross country borders.
Wonderful, thank you for that. That makes me think about how specifically our experiences in the United States have shifted how we identify ourselves, kind of what you alluded to, Melody. And I'm interested in knowing how each of you identify has influenced you may feel has influenced your opportunities, the things that you have been able to or not been able to accomplish, the rooms you may have been able to get into or not, or if you feel like it hasn't been a factor for you at all. I can share personally that honestly, when my hair is straight and I am speaking English in a certain way, I feel like there's certain rooms that I go a little bit more unnoticed in terms of my Latinness. And, when I come out with my curly hair and I'm a little bit more tan and I enter into other rooms, I've felt a difference, and it's difficult to deal with that at times. And I felt in different communities, especially as an actress, as I mentioned earlier, that I didn't quite fit the bill. And so I'm just interested to know, maybe even Denise, from your perspective, it was really important for us to have all different perspectives here, how you may feel you have been accepted or included based on how you identify. And just, I'm gonna unmute you if I can, or you can unmute yourself. I just think, oh, you're not muted. Do you want to unmute? You are muted.
There we have it. When I first came to Los Angeles, it was 1980, and It was very strange. Well, first of all, I came from a theater town. I was working in Chicago, and there was a lot of theater. So I came to Los Angeles, and there was only about 30 theaters that were very small. And, you know, I mean, true, the Marte Perform was alive and well, but they didn't quite hire Los Angeles people. They were hiring everyone but Los Angeles people. So, so it was very difficult. It was difficult in the perspective of entering a non-theater town, and also not fitting in any type. There, TV and film at that time was very limited for Latinos. Most of the people were doing servants, or we were all pimps and whores. That was about it. So what I started doing when everything that I was being seen for was the same stereotype of stuff that I truly didn't want to do, I started creating my own things, and I started my own theater company, which was LAD, Los Angeles LA Diversified. That's what it was, and we had all sorts of different Latinos, and it was great. And it wasn't like I was trying to do a Latino theater company, but I just wanted to use my Latino friends to create work that was for everyone. I mean, you know, Hamlet can be played by anyone. It's a universal theme. It's not a Latino, it's not an Anglo theme or anything like that. So the theater company that I created was about that. We did some original plays, and we did Three Sisters, anything that we could manipulate and make it with the sensitivity of the music of los Latinos, así, you know, so that we could use friends that I had that were musicians, and little by little, people started to noticing us. And so when you ask me how was I received, I was received as a non-anything. I wasn't American enough, or I wasn't Latina enough for the stereotypes that they wanted to create. So so I started creating my own persona. And the same thing was in film and TV. Little by little, it's how do you, in a way, educate people? How do you educate people, and how do you educate your own people? Because ultimately, we have to embrace all of us in order to make it, in order to produce new stuff, in order to be seen as leads, as leads in film, and in TV. So that's basically it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Denise. You touched on something, and it made me think about, really, you know, we have all these different experiences. We have varied experiences, varied histories as Latinos. We identify differently. We have, we fit into different areas in different ways, in different industries differently. We are not a monolith. And, you know, I want to ask Melissa if she can talk about how psychologically, what impact has our varied histories and experiences had on how we identify or even deny our identities within the Latino community to fit in, or to find our own lane?
Well, that is such a layered question, because I think part of it includes what was the experience in the country of origin. If it happened not to be someone that was born in the US with roots in Latin America. But I think a common thread, Kimberly, is structural oppression, you know, and how it has influenced how we see ourselves, how these stories, negative stories about who we are, have been passed down from one generation to the next, very systematically, so that it moves forward that division that keeps us from prospering and keeps us in survival mode. Not only here in the US, but in Latin America and the Caribbean. And so definitely that has had a negative impact psychologically, and it definitely is connected to colorism, where we would be racist amongst ourselves because we've bought into this idea that has been sold to us for generations, that you are less than if you're darker. And that definitely plays a part in our sense of identity, our sense of appreciation for ourselves and our communities. So psychologically, that is the negative impact. Thankfully, I want to say something about the pandemic. Thankfully, the pandemic has placed a magnifying lens on how all this social injustice that's been going on for generations makes it necessary that we go more deeply into our history, so deeply into it that we can learn something new about ourselves and not stay stuck with those negative identity stories that we've been sold for generations. So we have an opportunity here to make a shift from this negative psychological impact to the experience of healing. I could go on for hours.
That's what I'm sure, and I have so many questions based off of all that you just said. I want to pull out the fact that you mentioned, knowing our history. I think it's something that's kind of missing within, outside of the Latino community, and even within, is that we all have very varied histories. My family as Puerto Ricans they are American citizens. So we don't have the immigrant experience as Mexicanos have, Cubanos have. And I remember speaking with Juanita once, and we were talking about the Cuban experience for immigrating is very different from some, maybe even the Mexican experience for immigration, and how that may add, I should say, there's a lot we don't understand about each other's experiences and histories that I think the industry doesn't realize. We are all Latino, but we are very different at the same time. We have different cultural traditions in our homes, different family dynamics. So Juanita, if you'd like to speak to that in any way, I would love to hear your thoughts and your experience as a Cubana Colombiana.
It's so, and let me commend you, Kimberli. This conversation is one that we love to have via SPL, but it's a really important conversation. It's important in the sense that, as immigrants, as Americans, because people tend to make the mistake in thinking Puerto Rico is a foreign country when Puerto Rico is an American country, is part of America. The fact that the importance is that we need to educate each other. We need to chit chat with one another, learn about one another. It's important to share experiences because what you experience may be different from what I experience. How you feel may be different from how I feel. So it's important, it's not only people or immigrants, but human beings getting to know each other is the key. Education, history, as we learn from our ancestors, from our parents, we need to teach our children and teach others as they're coming up. That's one of the richness I got from not only my grandmother, but my mother being strong women and, Cuban women. And that's what instilled the pride in me as a Cuban, because as you know, as Latinos, I've heard my African-American friends say, I see you sometimes, you walk into a room, you're not afraid of just coming in. You're showing up. My thing is, and how I was raised, you show up and you show out. You come in and you're secure of who you are. As Latinas, each one of you, I just know you can come into a room and you're just proud of who you are. And it shows. And if we teach this to the children, teach the pride, Melissa and I make it such a big point when we go and we do workshops, because we go to schools and we do workshops, and I'll keep this very brief. We may do 1 week, we may do 8 weeks. But the thing that we teach our kids, especially African-American kids, because of their history here in this country, we teach them to be proud, to stand up, hold their heads up high, because all of us, immigrants and Americans, we're standing on the shoulders of their ancestors. We are standing on the shoulders of those that build this country that history is not talking about. So it's up to us to tell our history, not not other folks' history, but to tell our history and tell it right and tell it truthfully. So that's how I feel about it.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm just going to let everyone know, if you do have a question, please feel free to leave it in the chat. We're going to jump into our Q&A portion shortly. So this makes me think, as we can talk about these issues for hours and hours and hours, and we could do a panel on each specific country and their history, which we should think about. We may need to do something like that. And, how I think it's important that we're aware of the varied experiences that each of us have within the Latino community. I'm interested in knowing how we can leverage and take action towards healing in an effort to grow, build, and unite our communities. I think in the industry, sometimes, you see in marketing, someone markets a commercial to a Mexican family and thinks that that's going to resonate with an Afro-Cuban family. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. So how do we start to leverage our differences and take action to unite? And I'll ask Melody to jump in on that.
It's funny you mentioned marketing, that kind of ad in particular. I've always thought that you can't do one ad that will appeal to all Latinos. No one is going to get it that right unless you're showing a celebration, a party with all of them present. But there isn't the image of one specific family. And I think that's often where marketing, advertising tends to get it wrong, because when you show one family, of course, you create one label. But for leveraging and growing, so I think education, first and foremost, just to be frank, education, and I mean that on several levels. Formal education, yes, absolutely, in order for us to be able to compete on the field as well. But by education, I also mean staying up to date with what is going on and actively sharing that within our communities, within our households. We should know who is running for what seat. We should know what's going on outside of our bubble and how that affects our communities. And it should be active conversation. Like no one should be allowed to get off the hook. Maria la vecina, she doesn't get to not hear this information simply because, she's not interested. I find that, and of course, what's important with that is how we communicate. The delivery of the message is as important as the message itself. But in that education, of course, is also learning our history. We absolutely have to better understand who we are, where we come from, and challenge those very beliefs that we believe shape our identity, shape our community, and so forth. I also think that in order for us to grow and build, we get to honor our heritage and traditions while also improving and flat out removing what doesn't work for the next generation in order to have in order to better set up the next generation. We also have strength in numbers that I feel that we do not, as Latinos, especially in the US, take advantage of. I mean, our buying power alone as consumers, is something to be reckoned with. And corporate America is well aware, which is why they target us as they do. However, we're far too passive with our role when it comes to our role in the consumer market. I also think accountability. Honest and difficult conversations within our household, within our community. Accountability, also holding those that represent us accountable. And I'm not just talking about politicians. I think the conversation is across the board, whether it's about colorism in the Heights, or about whether Jennifer Lopez is bringing up anyone behind her in her success. We need to hold everyone who dares to bear the name of Latino or Hispano accountable. And lastly, I think protecting and teaching our girls and boys. We get to teach our boys to protect and respect women. It is a way of respecting themselves. I also think that we need to build our girls up more. Build them up, but more importantly, teach them to build each other up. I feel that what we get to pass on and ingrain is that sisterhood is sacred. And that's how it should be approached. Defending, protecting, and aligning with another woman should come first. And making sure that we are counted, that we are counted. And that looks like the census, that looks like voting, that is making sure that we are heard, that is making sure that those who represent us are actually taking care of our interests and needs, and when they are not, taking active roles and removing them and replacing them.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you, Melody. There's so much in there that we could unpack too, which is why I'm so thankful this is a series. And this is the first one of many. And we're looking forward to hearing what everyone else would like to, people in the chat and those viewing would like to see moving forward. So we're going to be asking that a little bit later on too. Does anyone else want to chime in on how they feel we can move forward in an effort to heal and grow real quick before we start our Q&A session?
I just wanted to add, first of all, Melody, that was beautiful, beautiful, what you just said. Besides education and uniting forces, it's about collaboration. We need to start collaborating with all of us. It's not just un grupito aquí, otro grupito acá. No, we need to collaborate, because that's what's going to let us get ahead. That's what I.
Oh, I think we lost you there. Then yes, agreeing, collaboration. That's beautiful. Does anyone else want to speak to that? Thank you, Melissa.
I'd like to say something briefly to echo what has been said, and also to share some reflections that thankfully are being had in the clinical community. Definitely this whole divide and conquer that has happened over generations, we can chop that down with everything that Juanita, Denise, and Melody have said about the power of education, about our history. Because when we go deeply into our history, then we learn about our strengths, the thing about our resilience. And so we don't limit ourselves to only learning about the lies we've been told, but also the beautiful truths about the richness of our history. You know, we don't move the way we move by coincidence, the way we talk, the way we eat. There are a lot of things that have been inherited and that we carry out unconsciously. So we want to become conscious of it. That's one of the missions of ISBL, helping our community become more conscious of the richness so that we can move from survival into thriving. But that's not going to be easy. We could talk about education until we're blue in the face, that education is going to include some pain. We're going to have some painful discoveries. And so the part I wanted to add about the clinical community is that thankfully in it, we are making a priority collaboration, like Denise shared, collaboration with professionals of many disciplines, because, you know, it's been centuries since therapy was created, and it was not created by us. And so we need to make sure that we are better represented, that what is part of our healing traditions doesn't continue to be seen as pathology. There need to be more cultural information about the way we move in the world, how we heal in the world. So I thank you, Kimberly, for doing this, because this is part of the healing process.
My pleasure.
Kimberly, you're on mute.
Thank you. All right. I said to you, and more to come, more education and more healing via this panel in our series and the future discussions. I'm going to pull some questions from Mark. I think I see Mark SCP SEP. He mentioned about the putting pressure on the studios that produce novelas and the univisions of the world that tend to hire folks with white European features. I think what you said, Melissa, is really interesting, because as we collaborate, as we come together, we have to make sure we're including everyone. And, you know, that's something that I think if we're going to move the needle forward, then we have to be a part of that needle. And would anyone like to speak on, or maybe I'll ask Denise, how do you feel about a representation in the industry and how moving forward, you mentioned briefly how we can move forward in terms of media representation and inclusion.
You're on mute, Kimberly.
Okay,
Melanie,
there we
you
go.
too. There we go, Denise.
There. I do believe that we're moving forward. Very slowly, but we are moving. We're moving. We're moving because we're speaking out, and we're unafraid now. So it's about building projects, though. It's about building our own stuff. It's about getting writers to writing stories that are our stories, right? Getting Latino talent agents to represent us, getting executive producers that are Latinos, getting directors, women and men that are Latinos, doing our stories and not being afraid of, well, no one's going to see it, or we're not going to get funded, or just doing the product. During this last year in 2020, during the pandemic, it was interesting to see how many people were being so extremely creative. And what was going on. I directed a movie during the middle of the pandemic. I mean, we rehearsed in Zoom. It was insane. We had so many crazy ideas. And it was a musical. It was a political a musical called Calle de la Resistencia. And it's about Puerto Rico. It's about what happened with Maria, and then what happened with the governor when he was, when the people spoke and got him down, right? So we rehearsed in Zoom, and then finally we got into the theater. We shot it in 3 days, which was insane. And then we edited. The editing took a long time, took a month. But what I'm trying to say is we need to create and not wait for what somebody else is going to put in the party. It's about us doing the work. I know that I sort of got myself out of the question of what do I feel about.
That's great. That's great. It's actually what you're actually bringing me to is the next thing that I wanted to kind of ask for everyone. I have 800 questions from all the things that you ladies have shared. There's so much, a wealth of knowledge in each and every one of you. I could have a panel with each of you. And what you highlighted for me, Denise, is this idea of, if we're going to move forward, right? I personally believe we have to move forward, but we also have to collaborate. We have to be inclusive. But I kind of want to end this panel, jumping off of what Denise said, with, if each of you could tell me what you would have, what hope you have for our community moving forward, whether it's in your specific lane or just in general, if you could say what you feel would be our next step, or how we could move, as I said before, move the needle just a bit forward, what would you offer? And anyone can jump in.
Kimberli, let me, I would like to just comment a little bit on Denise's, what she brought up, and then move forward, because I know we're, the time is running down, but, she was very, it's true, we need to tell our stories, but we also have to be careful when we tell our stories that we're not so quickly to criticize. And I say that because we have someone like the movie In the Heights. It was a beautiful movie that celebrated our culture. We have to be careful on how quickly we throw stones or we criticize. Here's a person that brought our culture and our people to the screen and making a movie about us. And I understand as a brown Latina that we weren't brought up totally to the forefront, but here is something that someone is doing. He didn't get it right the first time. Let's give that person a chance to get it right the second time, or let's make take it on yourself and do it so we can continue to show who we are as a people. But we need to unite and stand behind each other. We're so quickly to criticize on something that we may not have known or may not have thought about or may not have seen. This is where the teachable moments come in. And this is how we uplift and help each other. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Juanita. I will just say, as one of the dancers on the movie In the Heights, I had the wonderful opportunity of being a part of the film. And I spent 2.5 months in 2019, the summer of 2019, rehearsing and putting our blood, sweat, and tears into this, what we felt was a beautiful project. There was nothing but love and support on that set. And amongst the dancers, we focused so hard to make sure we were as authentic as possible, that we brought in everyone of every shape and color. And I do believe that as Lin-Manuel Miranda admits, that yes, the mark was missed. And I think, as you said, Juanita, it was a teachable moment. And as bittersweet as it is for me, because I would love to celebrate and just bask in that joy, I also feel it's important that we point out when we fall short, because that's the only way we can really move forward. And I think it's okay that both exist. I think it's okay that we made a beautiful, wonderful film. And I think it's okay that the film missed the mark in some ways. And it's hard for me to say that because I think Lin-Manuel told the story that he wanted to tell. And I think it was beautifully done. And seeing the Broadway play, there's greater texture and more layers about immigration and how we fit into certain societies within that movie. And my hope is that, as you said, Denise, we now make sure that we are aware of all facets of the Latino community so that no one feels hurt and we don't trigger any pain from groups that are not represented. Melody, would you like to jump in, or Melissa or Denise, and share any final thoughts about how your hopes for our community moving forward?
And I feel that the key ingredient, I feel, is becoming more committed to listening, not only to others' perspectives, but listen to ourselves for the wisdom that's in us that we may not have connected with. And I have been noticing many people talk about how in this pandemic, they felt that they were reflecting more, And so hopefully this panel conversation adds to that invitation to listen more and to the point about In the Heights. I agree with what's been said about how important it is to recognize art making as a process that can invite reflection, and we need to be careful with how we give the feedback. I work with artists, I work at CalArts, and something that comes up constantly is conversations with artists about being responsible for the work that they do and how they respond to the feedback. And my impression, I know it's biased, but my impression is that Lin-Manuel Miranda was a responsible artist in that he immediately responded to the comments in a way that said, he's willing to continue learning. And I think that's been the common thread in what we've been saying during this hour, that a key ingredient is to let ourselves continue learning, continue listening, continue learning, continue listening respectfully.
I wanted to say something. In 1992, I was part of a theater company called East LA Classic Theater, and one evening in 1992, we had a presentation that of classical work, because that's what the company was all about, presenting classical work. And Raúl Julia was there, and Chich Marin and Martin Sheen and Andy Garcia, and something that Raúl said, which touched my heart, was this, and I wrote it down that night because it's been in my head forever. No, he said, "We are not a race. There's only one race, the human race. We are a family comprised." Speaking about the Latinos, no, we are a family comprised of many ethnicities. Somos chinos, somos negros, somos blancos, somos indio. But the most important thing is that we are only limited by non-action, and we are only united when we are truly united. And God bless him. Goddess bless him wherever he is. And I believe in that. I believe that we are united as Latinos and as the world, because the world is comprised of all these ethnicities, right? But we are united if we hold each other, if we listen to each other, if we bring this love and unity together instead of infighting all the time. So that's my peace of mind.
Thank you, Denise. And I'll let anyone else, if they want to jump in before we wrap up and say farewell.
Yes, I would like to. So my hope, what I hope to see for the Latino community, especially in the US, is a stronger focus of our investment in each other. That I would love to see that our buying power, that we focus it on ourselves. Starbucks wouldn't flourish in Washington Heights if si compramos el cafecito. It's circulating, keeping our dollars within our community, but investing it, and in that financial literacy. It's essential for us to move forward. Latinos are still one of the groups with the highest unbanked numbers in New York City alone. Unbanked meaning que el dinero still under the mattress, you know, that the not in an actual bank account, no savings. I think that there's so much opportunity there. But that's what one of my greatest hopes for Latinos is to buy local, buy Latino, to focus our dollars to invest in each other, in our community.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Melody. And Juanita, do you want to be our closing comment?
Well, I would like to thank you, Kimberly, once again for this amazing panel discussion. In reading a lot of the comments online, and I want to thank everyone that have been posting comments here, I would say that this panel discussion is one that was well needed, and we will continue this, as you had mentioned before. Each one of us has brought our own experiences, and hopefully it helped in moving forward. I think healing is taking the good and the bad, but really focusing on the good more than the bad. Someone just wrote in the chat, a bird doesn't sing because it has an answer. It sings because it has a song, Maya Angelou. I think that is so beautifully said. And with that, I'll just say thank you to you and to everyone that joined us. And in the chat, I did put down information on the International Society of Black Latinos. And we look forward to the next sitting around the table in conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Juanita. I just want to note that in the chat, I just dropped a document. It's just a little quick survey. We'd love to hear your thoughts on tonight's panel, any things you'd like to be discussed in the future for upcoming series. We'd love your input. So if you just check the link down there and if you can click on it, it's just a few questions and it would be really helpful for us moving forward. I want to thank every single one of you here today on this panel watching. First, let me thank the panelists for all of your insights. You each had such wonderful perspectives. It was a pleasure to have each of you here, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. This is so wonderful. To everyone in the chat, those leaving messages, questions, and comments, I wish I could get to all of them, and we will continue to have conversation. I hear and see every one of you, and I welcome every single person's perspective, and I look forward to, in conversation, continuing to dissect who we are as Latinos and how we will move forward together in race, identity, inclusion, celebration, love, and pride. Thank you so very much. It was an honor. Again, please make sure you click the link. And
Kimberly, just quickly, don't forget to give them the date of our next one.
Yes, how could I forget? How could I forget? Most importantly, everyone, our next date for this panel will be Thursday, August 5th, a month from now in a few days. That's why we'd love to have your information in the link. Anything you feel you'd like for us to discuss. We have lots of people on deck, some amazing people that are ready to join us, and we're looking forward to setting that up really, really, really soon.
And the time will be a little bit, it will change by an hour?
We will change the time. We're going to make it 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific time.
Great.
Just to get some more folks on the West Side after work hours. Thank you so much to everyone who's been here. This was a complete joy. Thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing the conversation.